Hi guys, and thanks for joining me for this yoga sizzle video. This video is the deconstruction of an asana. So we're going to look at one yoga pose. And for this video, we're going to have a look at one of my favorites, Warrior II. In Sanskrit, it's called Virabhadrasana II. And what is it? It's the very famous Warrior II lunge pose. So it looks a little bit like this. So nice, strong legs, strong arms. And why do I love this pose? Well, precisely because you've got that strength. You're really strong in the legs. You're grounded in the body. Really standing. It's like you stand in your belief. And then from here, it lifts up, all that power lifts up through your body and out through your arms, and you open out across your chest, open your heart, and you reach out through your fingertips. So for me, it really embodies this being fierce with love. So let's understand what's happening in this pose. Well, let's have a look at the shape. Like I was demonstrating, it's this long side lunging position with the legs and with the arms reaching out at shoulder height. And what are our legs doing? So in the front leg, we're bending, flexing at the hips, but also trying to externally rotate the thigh. We're bending at the knee without letting the knee come past the ankle, and grounding down through the feet and keeping the big toe on the floor. The hips, the pelvis stays nice and level. There'll be a slight angle because nobody has hip sockets that point straight out to the side. So in order to accommodate, and everybody's going to have individual unique hip and pelvic structure. So some people will need to have more angle. Some people will be able to open a little more. But they're neutral, slightly angled pelvis. And then in the back leg, it's a nice, strong, straight leg, of course, without locking out the knee. And the hip is trying to, the leg, the thigh bone is trying to extend. So we help that sensation, you engaging into the buttocks of the back leg. And that helps to give this nice hip opening. So often this Warrior II pose is thought of as a hip opener. And we're trying to press down into the back foot. So really ground down. The outer edge of the back foot is in the floor and lifting a little through the ankle, through the inside of the leg. Back at the hips, like I was saying, they're level, neutral, slightly angled, and the spine is nice and tall. Again, it's a neutral upright spine, but there will be a slight twist as you turn your chest to the side against the angle of the pelvis. And then we take the arms out to the side, also known as adducting the arms, reaching out through the fingertips, and then we turn the gaze to look out past the fingers. So there will be this turning of the head will also give you a little bit more twist of the neck. So while we turn the spine in one direction against the angle of the pelvis, we turn the gaze forward. So you get a little bit of spinal twist as well. This long, open, strong posture. Now, some of the common misalignments that you'll see, very easy to observe, are the knee coming too far forward, the knee also dropping in, and the back toes too far back. You'll also see, it's also easy to see this where you're sort of almost leaning forward. So, how do you fix it up? Well, I like to say start at the center. The pelvis is the center of your body, right? So it's the hub. If you start with a neutral level pelvis, so upright pelvis, and you start with angling quite a lot forward, that will allow the front knee, that will help with the external rotation of this front leg so that the knee doesn't drop in. So once you bend into the knee and you position the knee so it's stacked over the ankle, the rule of thumb is if you can see your big toe on the inside of your knee, then you can start exploring the extent to which you can open up the pelvis. But you'll notice that if you take your back hip too far, pull the front knee in. So you adjust the angle, let that front leg stay in place, that's your anchor, and then slowly open out to the side. Now I've got quite a great range of external hip rotation. So my pelvis is going to look fairly square to the side, but it's not. There's definitely still slight angle. Some people will have to angle even more. Then they'll have even more of a twist in the spine as they turn the chest to the side, but that's okay. The important thing is that once you've found the position of the angle at your pelvis, that you adjust the back leg accordingly. So you want the toes, the knee, and the hip pointing in the same direction. So if your hips are angled quite a lot forward, make sure your knee and your back foot is also angled. That way you're not torquing and twisting into the knee. If you've got a lot of external hip rotation, then your foot might be parallel to the back edge of the mat. But it doesn't have to if your hips don't let you. So make the pose or the shape fit your body, not trying to force your body to fit the particular shape. And in order to maintain this level pelvis, really think of increasing the crease in the back hip. So it's almost like you're trying to karate chop into the back hip. And by doing that, you're pushing the back hip forward and you're lifting slightly with the front hip. And that will keep you a little level. If you've got a mirror, it can be really interesting to put your hands on the hips and make sure that it's nice and level. And then you can keep this angle of the pelvis and turn your chest to the side. But can you keep the spine upright? So from leaning forward, taking it upright. So these are some of the more obvious misalignments. Something else that can be quite common is also what I call the duck bum and the rib flare. So then might look a little like this. And how do you avoid the duck bum and the rib flare? Well, reach your tailbone down and zip your pubic bone up. So you get a sensation of fullness in your lower back. It can really help if you engage into your buttocks muscle. The back buttocks engages, and it's like you're trying to press the front of your thigh, or the front of your back hip, across on a diagonal. And in the back, or in the buttocks of the front leg, you're engaging that, and that helps to externally rotate. So more the glute medius, the external hip rotator muscles, are engaging to help anchor that front leg. So that will keep you in place, and that will help to keep the tailbone down, the pubic bone up. And the rib flare is, again, by having that sensation of trying to fill up the lower back a little, reining in these floating ribs. You might even feel that engages the muscles of your abdomen, so it helps you give you a little bit of a core workout. And as you take your arms out to the side, often we'll have our hands in different positions, and you just try and see if you can have them in line with your shoulder. And we don't often know what's happening in that backhand, so you can always have a look. Is it back here? Is it here? Is it up there or down there? Just adjust it, and then you turn your gaze forward. Now, in this pose, sometimes you might hear square the pelvis. And as I was explaining, it's not really possible because nobody has hip bones that point straight out to the side. So we can't square the pelvis when we start taking our legs apart. If we were to square the pelvis, that's what pulls the knee in. So it might look like you want to head in that direction, but it's not possible. You use the front leg as your anchor. Make sure the front knee is in line, and then you explore the range of hip opening. And in the beginning, if you're new to yoga, you might have tight hips, which could also restrict any hip opening. As your practice grows, you might develop more hip opening, but at some point you'll meet the end range of joint mobility for your particular hips. And that's when you sort of begin to feel bone on bone action, and you don't want that. So in the beginning, you might have short angled pelvis, and then little by little, you might be able to open more and more, but you will never be able to square the hips as if you're standing between two panes of glass. So what do you do if you're newer to yoga or if you're practicing with some injuries? Well, while Warrior II can be really good for building strength to support the knee and strength into the buttocks to support the hips, the pelvis, and the lower back, if you're practicing with something you need to be considerate of, or if you are fairly new to yoga, you stay up a little higher. You don't bend as much into the front knee. Still important that the knee tracks on top of the ankle and tracks in line with the second toe. So we don't want the knee dropping in. You want that sensation of external rotation. But you can happily stay up a little higher. And this might be your Warrior II, this might be your Warrior II, or this might be your Warrior II. If you have any sacroiliac issues or around the pelvis or the hips, you might feel better turning the back hip toes and angling the back hip a little more. Even though you have good hip rotation, it might ease any pressure if you angle a little more forward, and then you just turn from the chest instead. So that can help release pressure. And then being mindful to not hyperextend into the back knee. So that's just some modifications if you need them. And see how you go. Always being careful to listen to your body, listen to any pain. There is no gain if you feel pain. So you have to make sure that you feel comfortable. So that was a little bit about what the posture looks like, the components of Warrior II, how to build the shape with your body. But then how do you get into it? So the style of yoga that I practice and that I teach is Vinyasa yoga. So it's the flow, it's a dynamic flow style. And so you'll be moving from one posture to the next. So how would you move into Warrior II? Well, one of the probably more common ways would be from a high lunge. So whether your arms are up, or your heart, or your hips, or interlaced behind you, who knows where your hands will be. But your leg, the front leg, is where it needs to be. So there's that bend at the hip, there's a bend at the knee, and your front knee is stacked over your front ankle. And from here, keeping your leg in position, you can even use your front hand to help it there. In the beginning, you start externally rotating the back leg. Your thigh, or your pelvis is neutral and upright, your spine is neutral and upright, so you're just turning the back thigh as far to open the pelvis as far as your front leg lets you. Then once the heel is on the ground, you might notice that you can shuffle the back foot a little further along, but without opening the hips too much so the front knee drops. Remember, the front knee is where it needs to be. Front leg is where it needs to be. So you've just opened, and it's really good for you for building strength into your buttocks, which are going to help support your pelvis, support your legs, support your core and your back. And then once your heel's on the ground, you can open your arms out to the side. Leaving Warrior II, going back to a lunge, it's the same thing. You can even circle your back hand down as you spin onto the ball of the back foot, turning, lifting the heel and turning forward, and then you might bring your hands down to the ground. Now another transition that you might hear is coming from down here with your hands on the ground, and then you turn the back heel to the floor. Again, remember, the front knee is in its lunge position. It's where it needs to be. So you turn the back heel to the ground. Coming from down here, your back toes might need to turn a little further forward. It's also a little easier to stick your butt out to the side, especially if you're feeling tight in the hips. If that's the case, you might come up a little higher. But be really cautious of keeping that front hip reined in. It's like you're tucking the sit bone in. And then you really activate your glutes to press down into the feet. Keep that front leg anchored. And then you lift up using the buttocks muscle. Spine lifts up. You adjust your legs if you need. Arms out to the side, gazing forward. Warrior two. Now for some people, that lift up from down low can feel a little strong or hard on the lower back. If that's the case, and you're coming from down low, you bring the back heel to the floor. You walk your hands a little towards the back foot so that you can bend into both legs. And then with a bend in both legs, again, you squeeze your butt to lift up, rolling up through the spine, straightening the back leg and bending into the front leg, and ta-da, you're there. Arms reach out, hips level, buttocks toned, supporting the pelvis, spine upright, and a slight twist to open the chest. And again, to come out, you might lift the back heel and bring the hands down to the ground. So that's a little how to get in and out of the pose. If you feel like, okay, I've got the hang of it, and you want to start taking it a little deeper, well, that's what you do. You take it deeper. You can take your legs a little longer, and you start trying to bring your front thigh parallel to the ground, but without compromising on the position of the front knee, the angle of the hips, the level of your pelvis, and the position of your spine. So it just means you start making it longer and deeper. And that's your warrior two. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you learn to love this pose as much as I do. And get onto your mat and have fun. See you again soon. Namaste.